Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to class today. Thank you for joining me, whether you're watching live or you're watching the recording. I just appreciate you watching. So today we're just going to go through a quick little demonstration of the things that you'd need to know for the HTML and CSS Bootcamp assignment. We might also talk a little bit about some other things, time permitting. So I kind of just want to fly through this really quickly. If you're also in the Web 140 class, you'll also get the benefit of seeing this again tomorrow, or something very similar again tomorrow. So what I want to do is I want to basically demonstrate my setup, explain how I have my setup created. You probably want to set yours up maybe a little bit differently. But if you've never done anything like this before, or you're not quite familiar with how you'd set up this sort of environment, this should be very helpful for you. So we'll do just a little bit of code demo, and we'll talk about setup here really quick. So for my setup, I use Visual Studio Code primarily as my code editor of choice. Here I'm on the code.visualstudio.com website. This is the easiest place to get the download for the installer. It runs on Windows, it runs on Mac, it runs on Linux. There is even a web version if you are on a Chromebook. We can see here if we go to web, we can see vscode.dev, and it's basically the exact same environment in a browser as a PWA or progressive web application. So I have my environment downloaded. So you just download and install based on whatever platform you're using. Once you get it, you'll see something similar to this. You might want to set your settings in a certain way. Right? If we look at our preferences, we can set our settings. There's a ton of settings that we can look at here. To kind of get things the way that you want it, you might want your font size bigger or smaller. I think I'm going to make mine just a little bit bigger for the purpose of doing demonstrations. You can change the font. You can change the way things look. There are all sorts of options that you can get in and play with in terms of customizing your workspace. Another thing that you're going to probably want to do is add some extensions. If you'll look here on the left-hand side, you'll see 1, 2, 3, fourth icon down. Looks like 4 squares with 1 square slightly separated from the other 3. This is our extensions menu. I have several extensions installed for different things that I do. So I have my .NET extension installed, C#, debugger for Java, Docker with dev containers. Got some stuff for Python, for Jupyter Notebook, for LaTeX. Some stuff that you're going to want for this course in particular. The first one is going to be Live Server. This is my favorite one. Alternatively, you could use this live preview here from Microsoft. My favorite one is this Live Server from Ritwick Day. If we search Live Server in the extension menu, you'll see there are some other people who are trying to kind of get in on the action. You can see like this one here uses a similar icon. This one here uses a similar icon. but specifically the one by Ritwick Day is my favorite. Alternatively, the one from Microsoft is also a really good one. I've tested both of those out, and they're both really good. I recommend installing them. You'll see how those things work here in just a few minutes. Another thing you might want would be something like this prettier code formatter. This is used to just make code formatting even better. By default, Visual Studio Code already does markup and everything for your code. This just makes it a little bit nicer. And you can install that as well. Prettier code formatter. You can see everything's kind of run in tabs here. The settings will open in a tab. The extensions open in a tab. If we go into Explorer here, usually what I will do is I will actually go to File, and I will create a new folder if one doesn't already exist. So the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to just create it using Windows Explorer. So I would go to wherever I want this to live. Create a new folder. So if I create a Web 210 Fall 24 folder there, I can create a new folder in here for the Bootcamp demo. And then I can just use VS Code to open that folder. Right? And that's going to create a workspace inside of that folder that I can put multiple different files in. So I can open that folder, I can navigate to that folder on my machine. Web 210 FA24 Bootcamp demo. Select that folder. Yes, I trust the authors. And from here I can make everything that I need to make inside of this workspace. All right, so if I look here at my Explorer window, I can see little plus signs for a new file, a new folder. All right, so I can make a new folder and call it, say, media or images. I can make a new, I want to do that outside of there. So I want to make sure that I'm back outside of the folder. I can create a new folder called index.html. Now, one of the things that you'll want to look at is you'll see nesting here when you're using folders and stuff. If this accidentally got inside the media folder, you'd see that it would kind of nest it, and you can see it's moved over to the right a little bit. I can take it back out of the folder by just dragging it. But one of the things that you'll notice is that when I go into my Bootcamp demo folder here, those files were created in there. So I can create the files here, or I can create them in Windows Explorer, either one. And remember that in general, our base file for a website is going to be called the index file. So it's going to be the index.html. And then I also have a folder that will contain our media here. So this is going to be where we would put any images, any videos, audio, whatever, right? So one of the cool things about VS Code is that since it knows this is an HTML file, it can use different things to be able to take advantage of it. One of the things your module talks about is the HTML skeleton. I don't have to write an HTML skeleton in VS Code ever. I just write an exclamation point. And when I do that, you'll see something like this pop up, where Imid is basically telling me that, hey, like, I recognize this exclamation point. It is a shorthand for something. So exclamation point and enter on that. And I have my HTML skeleton there ready for me to go. Which is pretty cool, right? Like, that's going to save you a ton of time. You know, doing that. Pretty awesome. So if we go into our module here, let's see, I have too many browser windows open. Here's the one that we're working with. If we go into our module, which is module 1, and we look at our refresh bootcamp assignment, or actually it's outside of here, in our assignments folder. If we look at our bootcamp website build assignment, we see we have Dave's computer repair. And the first thing it asks for is an HTML skeleton, which we've already done, right? We've already built an HTML skeleton using just an exclamation point in VS Code. We see here Dave's computer repair has a logo for us that I can just download to my device. All right, you'll see some arrow pointing down like this here on the page when you click it. Let me open it in a private window just so you all can see a little bit better about what it would look like to you. Or actually, it would make you log in, but since you're a student, you should be authorized and you'd log in. And you'd just be able to download it from there. And I can actually drag this into my project, right? So I can drag it from Explorer. So if I found my downloads here, I can drag my Dave's repair.png image into my media folder. And now it's a part of the project, right? Like if I go here to my Bootcamp demo folder and I go into media, we see it is there now. All right, so one of the first things that I would want to do is change the title of my document in order to make sure that my computer or my website is W3C compliant. We'll change it to Dave's Computer Repair, best in town, or whatever you want to call it, right? Like that's going to be up to you. One of the things that I do a lot with my websites is I use HTML5 to establish the structure. You know, this is something that you should have talked about a lot in your Web 115 course, is establishing this structure. So I'm going to create a header section, which is different than a heading, right? We have heading level 1, heading level 2, heading level 3, but this is a header. We have our main, where we'd put our main content, and we'd have our footer, where we'd put our footer content. Right, and so one of the things that it asks for is, I believe, a copyright in the footer. If we go back, we can look and just verify that. A footer section with a copyright notice. So I can use and copy semicolon 2024 Dave's Computer Repair. And if I wanted to do this right, I should put this in some sort of span or some sort of paragraph tag. So let's add a paragraph tag here for semantic purposes. Make sure this text is wrapping or is wrapped by these tags, right? Remember that, you know, when we're using HTML, we have an opening tag and a closing tag typically. In our image or in our header here, we might want to put our logo image. Remember that a logo image is a non-paired tag, also called a self-closing tag. So this would be img src equals /media /davesrepair.png. We'll give it an alt text of Dave's computer repair, and we'll add the self-closer. All right, so now we have the image in the header, and we have the copyright notice in the footer. All right, if we save this, we can actually open this with our live server. This is our Ritwick Day live server extension that we were speaking of earlier. To get to that, I'm going to right-click on my page, and I'm going to select Open with Live Server, and that's just going to open it up in the browser. Just like that. You can see it looks pretty ugly right now, right? Because we don't have any CSS yet. But that's what it looks like. Right? That's the stuff that we've added. If we look here, it tells us that we want to have 3 different headings. We want to have 2 pictures. So we got a logo file. We'd want some other picture. So I've demoed a picture. We want a basic menu in the heading. Okay. So for a basic menu, we would use typically a nav tag. This is something more that you'd get from Web 2.15. If and when you were to take that course, you would have got something similar in Web 1.15, where we did it with an unordered list. But I can also do it with a nav tag. A nav tag is a semantic tag that outlines a navigation. So I would just create my nav tag, and in between it, I would put links. So that'd be ahref equals some fake link. So let's make a fake home link. Home. And let's see, I'm supposed to have 4 menu items that don't go anywhere. So I could have like home, about, contact, and service. So we just change our tag in each of these. So this one becomes about, contact, and services. And like all of these demos that I'm doing like this, I usually do them, and let me make sure I have my YouTube window pulled up here just in case there were questions. I had it covered up with the assignment text. But whenever I'm doing these sorts of demos, I'm usually just kind of winging it and just sort of doing things just like off the top of my head. I'm not going to do the whole demo for you in this presentation, but we're going to do a lot of it. And so when we save that, we'll have and go back and look at our live site. You can see we have a little navigation there. Now it's super ugly, right? Again, because we haven't added any CSS to it. Let's add a little bit of copy to it. This might be a good use case for a little GPT. So let me get GPT to generate some copy for me. might be interesting to do here. It's like I mentioned when we were talking previously, GPT is a tool, right? AI is a tool. I don't mind if you use it as long as you tell me how you used it, how you implemented it, what you used, how you used it, and how you implemented it. So if we just ask it to help me write some copy for a website for a business called, I will say it's a fake business, for a fake business called Dave's Computer Repair. The copy should have, let's see, how many paragraphs did we say in our assignment? 3 paragraphs. So it should have the following: 1 heading, 2 subheadings, and 3 paragraphs. Generate the text only. Do not generate any code. Right? Because in this case, it doesn't really matter what the text says, right? I'm not grading you on your text. I'm grading you on your ability to actually put it in a website. Right? So the H1 that it's given here is, and I can just kind of pull this over just so you can see the output. Just gives me some text here that I can use. It's also really better. It's a lot better than me just using lorem ipsum for these demos too. Expert repairs for all devices. Remember, H1 is a heading level 1. That's the one that we always start with. I'll copy and paste this first paragraph over. Paste that in. Add our next heading. Heading 2 is personalized service and affordable pricing. Then we'll copy and paste the next paragraph over in here, like so. And finally, the last one, we'll do another H2. Why choose us? And the last paragraph. There we go. So now we can save this. We can look back at our live site. And we can see all of our text added in. Now, this is the bulk of the project, right? Like if we look at what we're being asked to do here, we can check off the stuff that we've done. Right, so HTML skeleton, that's done. 3 headings of at least 2 different levels, that's done. 3 paragraphs, that's done. 2 pictures, we've got 1. So we'd want to add another one. The heading text should be a different color than the paragraph text. We'll handle that in a minute when we handle CSS. A header section with a basic menu. That's done. A footer section with a copyright notice. That's done. So we need to change the heading text add our CSS, add a price list, which I think for the purposes of our demo, I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to let you figure out this one on your own. But in adding the CSS, it'll let me do this, and it'll accomplish this. So it'll basically be everything except for adding one more image and a price list. So I'm going to create myself a new file over here the same way I created my index.html. I'm going to find this new file icon with the plus sign on it here. Get that. And I'm going to call this something like style.css. Doesn't really matter what you call it as long as you call it the same thing. Then I want to make sure I link it in my index.html. All right, so inside the head, typically at the bottom of the head, we're gonna add a line that is link href equals, and this is going to be ./style.css, type equals let's see here, type should be text/css, and then we should have a rel that equals style sheet. And boom. And so this will tell my HTML file to look in the style.css file for the CSS, right? So this particular line here is crucial. Hit Control Z instead of Control S right there to save. So now in my style.css, I can start adding all of my styling. All right, so let's say, for example, that's a dark blue there in Dave's logo. So let's say if we wanted to make the body one color. One of the things I always do is I reset all my styling. So I will use an asterisk selector, which is something that we'll talk about a little bit. That selects basically everything on the page. The asterisk is our wildcard selector. And I'll use this to reset a lot of stuff. So I'll add a box sizing, border box. I'll add a font family is, let's say, Open Sans, comma, Arial, comma, sans serif. Right, these are fallback fonts, right? So it's going to try Open Sans. If your user doesn't have Open Sans on their computer, it's going to try Arial. If they don't have Arial on their computer, it's just going to do whatever default sans serif is for that device. And we can save that, and we should already see a big difference, right? Let's check it out now. Too many things open. Here's my window. Oh, there it is. So we can already see a big impact here, right? I already see a big impact. So I might want to make a background color for the site. So in order to do that, I'm going to affect the body of the site. We're going to add a background dash color property. And we're going to try to get as close as we can to that dark blue. That's the Dave's computer blue. So we'll use our hexadecimal colors here. I'm going to put a teeny tiny little bit of red in here. So let's say maybe 0F red. Let's say maybe no green, 0 green, and like 3-1 blue. To see how close we can get to that dark blue. And so that's the blue background color that we get, and it's pretty close. But I don't have any reference up for this anywhere. I'm just kind of going off of what I see, right? If you can remember back, Many of you probably didn't have Web 115 with me, but that's one of the things that I do when I teach Web 115 is I do my my party trick where I do hex colors, and we'll talk about colors as a big part of this course a little bit later on, so you'll get that information. But one of the things we can also see there is that's unreadable, so one of the things that I might want to do is I might want to take my main, make it a little bit more narrow, so let's say width of like 80%. We'll center it up with our margin centering trick, which is margin 0 auto. We'll give it a background color of white, and we'll add a little bit of padding to it, like let's say 12 pixels, just to pull the text in a little bit from the sides of the box. Right, when we do that, we end up with this. All right, now it's starting to look like a website. We can see some of the things that we might want to do here, right? We might want to give it, like, say, a min height, just so we have more space taken up on our site. Another thing that we could do to combat that is to address our footer and what's done there. We'll do that here in a few minutes. Let's just do several things here. Like let's address our nav. Or you know what? Let's address our header. Let's address our header first. I'm going to make that background color white. And remember, these are tag selectors. So like this header here corresponds to this header here in my HTML. So once we do that, we pull that over, we see we have a nice header here. One of the things that we might want to do is go to our body and affect a padding 0. And also add our HTML tags to this. So that we can get rid of that little, if you would have noticed before, there was kind of a little channel around. There still is here. There's this little channel around here. That's going to serve to kind of get rid of that. We want to kind of get rid of that. Another place where I might do that is up here in our asterisk selector. That's going to help. That's just going to apply it to everything on the page. But that's also going to require you to add things in yourself. I'd also want to add a margin of 0 in here also. And we end up with something that looks like this. Right, which this is looking okay. I'm going to add a min height. To my main. Min height. And let's say it's going to have a min height of, say, 700 pixels. All right, that's just going to make that a little bit bigger. You'll notice that one of the things that happened when we applied this margin 0 to our asterisk selector, that everything got kind of sucked in together. All of our paragraphs and stuff kind of got sucked in there. So I'd probably want to take all of my H1, H2, and my paragraph and just add a little margin bottom to it. H1, H2, and a paragraph. We'll just add a margin dash bottom, and we'll do, say, to rim. That'll make it look like that. You can also affect those individually if you want them to be different sizes between them all. whatever you want to do. Right, for our purposes now, we're just kind of going through this pretty quickly, so I'm just going to leave it there. I might make that a little bit smaller, like say 1.5 rem. I'm also going to put a little bit of padding on top of this main box here, just to pull that H1 down just a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit of padding dash top. Let's say 24 pixels. So that when we save that, we see that pulls that down just a little bit. It was up here a little bit higher. Now we pull it down just a little bit. And it's cool. Let's center up the logo. One of the things that we might want to do here is we might want to add, say, an ID equals logo here on the logo in our HTML. That way we can select it separately from any other image that's on the page. And then in our CSS, we can focus hashtag logo. By default, our HTML element is not, or our image element is not an inline element. It's not a block element. It is an inline element, which makes it harder to center. So what I want to do here is I want to say display block to make that easier to center. And then I can use my margin centering trick to center the logo right up. Logo's nice and centered there. Now we can address that nav. So let's take the nav. Black's also a color that's used in the Dave's Repair logo, so I can give that a background color of black. I might also want to add a little bit of padding to this. Like, let's just add, say, 10 pixels of padding all the way around. And if I do that, one of the things that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want these links to be more readable. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of do this a little bit of a cheaty way, right? Ideally, I'd want to do this probably with a grid, right? Which is something that we would cover in Web 2.15. But we can do this in a simpler way that we kind of would have done it in Web 1.15 by, in our parent container, which in this case is the nav, we would just text align center. And that's going to center our links up. Right? So now what I can do is I can focus the links that are specifically in the nav. So I can nav greater than A. And the greater than here is basically serving the purpose of saying look inside of nav for links. Look inside of nav for A tags. So if there are any other links in your document, it's not going to impact them. It's only going to impact links that are inside of the nav. So here I can do color white to turn those links white. I can do a little bit of padding, 0 on top and bottom. Let's say we do 24 pixels on the left and right. And we end up with a pretty simple little navigation there. One of the things we noticed is I forgot to change the name of contact there. So let's go back into our HTML and just change contact there. Oh no, we did. I forgot to do services. This is supposed to be service. As I mentioned, I just kind of do this off the cuff. So now we have that. Home, about, contact services, got our stuff. We got to address our footer. We can make our footer basically the exact same color. as the nav, so we can do that, say, background color black. We can make the text color white. We can focus that footer paragraph by going footer greater than P. Text align center. Adding top 12 pixels. Font size 0.8 em, right? Let's just do that and make it a little bit smaller than it would be otherwise. So now we have that down there at the bottom. We want to make that a little bit taller. So we might want to take our footer and make it like a min height of, say, let's try 3 rem, see what that looks like. And that looks pretty good. And we have a basic site for Dave's computer repair in a nutshell here, right? And so I'm going to put this site on GitHub so I can share this code with you. If you're in the Web 115 class, you will also learn how to build things on GitHub. So I'm going to make a Web 210 FA24 on GitHub that I can share with you all. And this is something that you wouldn't have to do, but it's something that you might want to do a little bit later on. I'll create my new terminal. We'll cd up a level. We'll get init. We'll get add period. We will get commit -m first commit. We will add our origin. From the Git site, and we will get push origin master. Beautiful. So now it's going to be on GitHub, so I can share this with you. You can you can get this, you can download it, you can look at it. You can have it for reference. Oh, you know what we didn't do that I forgot about there? Is I forgot to do making the H1s a different color. We can do that with the H1s and the H2s. So I'd say something like H1, H2, make it this same dark blue color. Well, we did make a different font color in here as well, so we already demoed that. But we could say H1, comma, H2, color, that color, and that's done now. So if we look at our way too many windows open here. It's hard to tell here because it's such a dark blue, but it's a dark blue now as opposed to being black. And I can just push that code right up as well. So I can say something like git add period git commit -m change H1 and H2 colors in Bootcamp demo get push origin master. And again, you'll learn how to do all that if you're also in the Web 140 class, or if you take the Web 140 class later on, you'll learn how to do that. So that just updates my code. And so I think that's all that I want to talk about for today. All right, we'll leave the We'll leave the list as something that you can figure out on your own. That should be an easy one for you. You know, you can kind of see how mine looks here. It'd be great if you kind of made yours your own, so it looked the way that you want it to look. That'd be awesome. If you're in the Web 140 class also, you'll be seeing something similar to this demo tomorrow. We might do one or two little different things on the process. But that's the basics of it. That's all that I have for you for today. We'll go ahead and stop here. If you have any questions, we'll hang out here in the chat for just a couple minutes to see, you know, if anybody here live has any questions. If you're watching the recording and you think of questions, please email me or Teams me and let me know. But that's all that I have for you for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.